Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins podcast with your host, Ashley Crowder.
Hi, and welcome to Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins. I'm your host, Ashley Crowder, and every other Wednesday, we have a new expert from the 3D space to dive into different topics to help you scale 3D and digital twins across your business to reduce costs, increase speed to market, and improve maintenance, training, and sales. Today, I am going to throw it back to an interview I did with my good friend Cynthia Maller from Walmart. She is head of 3D creative technology, and she and I are going to talk about the real value of a 3D asset and how Walmart scales 3D across the enterprise. Hi, my name is Ashley Crowder. I am the co-founder and CEO of VNTANA, and I am so excited today to have Cynthia Maller from Walmart. She is the head of 3D creative technology. Welcome, Cynthia.
Welcome to you too.
Thank
Good
you.
morning here on the West Coast and good late morning. It's so great to talk to you. This is a wonderful treat for me.
Yeah, so excited to have you on. I mean, I've known you for years in the 3D space, and you were one of the first members at that initial Kronos meeting when Kronos got started to create standards for 3D. But yeah, if you just want to give people a little bit of your background, I'll let you kind of take it.
Oh, thank you. So early on, I came up through the ranks doing traditional advertising, TV, radio, print, outdoor, the slew of things, and then was lucky enough in 1999 to be brought up to Silicon Valley to work at Yahoo as first digital creative director. And I kind of brought with me this mindset that everything is possible. So that's really helped me. In Hollywood, the prop masters are really magicians. And we do things differently now to some extent, but that imagination of having builders be able to create whatever it is you're thinking of is just such a treat. And in Silicon Valley, I started working in the digital space. And again, I feel very lucky because I left a lot of colleagues. I didn't leave behind, but they stayed in traditional, and it took them a long time, maybe even a decade, to kind of catch up. And I'm very grateful to my experience there. And then I went on to some technology companies like PayPal. I did a brief stint at Google, which was lovely. And then made my way through Sam's Club and then Walmart. And just organic, I think a lot of this happens organically in just seeing for retail. You just notice in the operational sense, where can we improve? And even though I'm strictly a creative, for me, it benefits the rest of the creative team if I can smooth things out. And that's the root of how I got here today.
Yeah, no, and you say you're strictly a creative, but now creative means digital and tech, right? And I think
it does.
Your point, I love that anything is possible and being open, because what digital meant, 20 years ago is totally different than what digital means today. And you were kind of always on the forefront of learning the latest, greatest tech, which is why you're, working in 3D and we're today.
I think when I got to Yahoo, it was one of those things that was just necessary for me to go and make friends with the engineering team. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I could not have prevailed as successfully if I didn't understand the technology underpinning the site. So early on stuff that's kind of laughable now, but geo-targeting, day part targeting, things like that. If I didn't understand that the technology could do that, I couldn't, it would have just been a bunch of banners.
Right.
It wouldn't have been anything innovative. So, yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And then today, so as the head of 3D creative technology at Walmart, you are kind of leading the charge with a lot of the 3D model creation there. So talk to us a little bit about, what are you guys creating 3D models for? What is the purpose? I think people kind of hone in on these flashy, news NFTs, but you guys have been doing 3D for a long time, and it's been helping throughout the retail value chain. And some people might not even know they're looking at an image online and that's 3D and not a photo from you all.
Yeah, including people with whom we work, and it's wonderful to kind of show them, hey, what you're looking at is 3D. It never gets old, the moment of like, really? Right? So when I first got to Walmart, I actually worked as head of brand and creative technology for hayneedle.com, which is a digitally native acquisition in the home space. And they ran a ginormous photo studio. And just looking at some of the endemic problems with retail content creation, especially visual creation, it just seemed like we could pull another lever, which was 3D, which would help a lot of that. So some of the day-to-day of why we make 3D models has to do with serving merchandising. So they'll have a story, which they do because they're very much editorial. And then to enable that story, I don't have a virtual background, but everything that's curated here, we would need to make into a model in order to create that image, including the room itself, right? So we started making 3D models as just part of what we did. And for the retail imagery, it's incredibly important for the image to be a living, changeable thing. And we couldn't do that without 3D. And in fact, I'm very passionate about not doing composite with Photoshop or a photo and 3D. I just never want us to get in that habit. I don't think it just doesn't net the same result, and your image isn't as flexible in the long run. Everything has to be in 3D. So day to day, that's what we do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So, a lot of times, management or organizations can say, well, let's create, the chair in 3D, but let's get it done. Let's move it fast. And it's like, well, if you're putting Band-Aids on things, and doing it halfway, you're losing some of that value, which to your point, if you're building the full room in 3D, if you're building all of your products in 3D, you can create anything you want. And you have, we kind of talk about like the highest level asset is 3D because you can make anything you want from that 3D, whether it's a 2D video or image or all the renders you want. That's great. And I'm super excited about the project you launched on hayneedle.com, where actually consumers themselves can be there and change out the chair or the picture on the wall. So yeah, would love for you to talk about that project, how it came about, and really what was needed to implement it.
Right. So Hayneedle doesn't have a consumer app anymore. So when the company at large, Walmart, started to lean heavily into enterprise-wide AR, I didn't want them to get left behind, because even though it's not always app-based, for them it was a moment of like, well, we have all these 3D models that we're making, but we cannot leverage them for AR on our network or our app, which doesn't exist. So we were thinking also from what's valuable to the merchants first. We were thinking about that operationally, and so, I used to do a lot of UX design. And one of the things that happens when you're shopping is you have this beautiful inspiration image, but then as you scroll down to shop, it gets out of your field of view very fast on mobile web, obviously. And then you're kind of left to your own devices. The purpose of the inspirational image is to help you shop. So it occurred to us that if we could lift all of that content, all of the shelf page, as we call it, the 7 dressers and the 8 sets of sheets and the different lamps that we were showing as the look, what if we could lift that up into the image and they didn't have to scroll at all to shop? That was the first thing we said to the merchants. Imagine if instead of curating just 7 things, like 1 TV stand, 1 dresser, 1 couch, what if the whole collection that you're trying to sell could be leveraged in 3D and the consumer could shop that whole thing and configure a room? We had some assumptions of how it would improve performance, but with anything new, when I first saw the numbers, I'm like, let's cut those in half for what we're trying to promise will happen to fund and expand the program. So for merchants, it gave them the ability to lift all of that content into the image, and the ideal is in real time, if something sells out or gets bad reviews, they just remove it from those choices. And if people go to hayneedle.com and then scroll down a little bit to build your dream room, they can play with this and you'll see. So, the next frontier is linking those options to an automated backend. So if they sell out or something, it just gets replaced. But so the merchant is able to have that flexibility. And then, the consumer, it helps them shop because, again, they can look at everything we're trying to sell and see it in the room and configure it differently. And, it has an enjoyment factor, but, and, we like that they're having fun, but it's kind of like, we're not here to sit in the aisle of Borders and read the book. We want you to buy something. So for us, it was a really great, Hayneedle is a closed system, and they really are an innovation lab for the rest of the corporation. They're very important that way. The Hayneedle leadership has always been really visionary, and I would even say brave, to try things on Hayneedle that haven't been done yet. And so we have it's a working title, is dynamic display. It's not very sexy or even intuitive. So that's been go ahead.
It's great. I mean, I've told you, have not decorated my house. I moved here a year ago, and like, I'm like taking screenshots from websites and trying to put on a PowerPoint all the pieces together. Like, honestly, like I've done this. So I think it's such a creative way to use 3D and easy for the consumer, right? So it's kind of like these baby steps of like, I always say it's amazing technology if people don't even realize it's 3D or what it is, right? They're just changing out chairs and tables and seeing this beautiful image. So like the tech part kind of fades away. I
want to distinguish it from the build a room that's out there, because we're not asking them to start from an empty room. We're giving them an inspiration. And then, sorry to cut you off, because build a room is great and it serves a function, but for Hayneedle customers, we didn't want them to have to start from scratch. That's a little bit daunting. So
exactly. And starting from that inspiration, because again, like, I'm not a decorator. I need someone to tell me where to start, and then I can make a few choices. But that's great. And how have you seen that perform, or like from, we kind of started out talking about how you guys use 3D to create so much of the digital imagery. Kind of what are some of the like case studies or value you guys have seen from using 3D, whether it's cost savings or speed or consumer engagement?
Yeah, well, the lovely thing is, so with the art.com catalog, they were brave enough in 2019 to just, for whatever reason, listen to me and go full 3D for a printed catalog. They didn't even use it on the website. And I kind of held my breath for the phone calls, right? But they never came. And so clearly people couldn't tell the difference. And that was wonderful, because you're holding it this close to your face. So that body of work really led to a lot of questions and a lot of desire on behalf of the rest of the company to try this out. And I say a lot, I don't like to just sell it by comparing the photography costs. Photography will never win. So that said, telling people a company like art.com that doesn't have the big budget that some of the larger brands in the world do, being able to cut their production budget by 90% and perhaps even shift that money somewhere else, that was a big deal for them. So the organization has seen different benefits. Some of it's just emotional for people to see that there's a different way of doing things that saves the environment. Even there's if anyone out there has a algebra calculation for how to calculate carbon offset, please let me know. I could do it by hand, but it seems kind of daunting. But I think that the corporation has seen, depending on who they are and what they're doing, the benefits are really exciting to them. I've talked before about merchants being able to have control over their content and make changes was really great. The idea that a photo, what looks like a photo, is a living thing. I might say something like, it's like being able to leave every set up that you ever build, which never happens, not in retail anyway, and not at Walmart. So the idea that for the creative people, they can come back to something they've built already and make some changes if they need, and for the merchandising organization having control, and then at large, the cost savings, I look at it more like being able to save some money and then reinvest that money in maybe, a beautiful TV spots that we do, or beautiful fashion shoots or beauty shoots, things that really could use some love and would benefit from that. So this, for the photography organization, the creative organization, this has been a great lever to say, let's take this body of requests that would look really great in 3D, and let's do it in 3D. And then you can take, if you want, you can take those savings and put it back into other projects. So sometimes I think a lot of companies, it's not like we just want to spend less. It's like, how can the investment mix? I always say, I'm not Walmart leadership, but I have a feeling if they just want to save money, they would just do less photos, which we don't want to happen. So yeah.
No, I totally agree. And this is not, we're never going to replace photography, but I think your point of using photography for those, iconic shoots or the big project you want to do, and being able to use 3D for, the rooms and the other things that could make sense. Right. It's a balance. And then, so we've talked a lot about, the 2D renderings and that you can do from 3D, but you guys have, obviously also have like augmented reality and letting consumers be able to like place the furniture in their room true to size. Would love to hear more about, how that got implemented, how you guys are seeing it roll out. And I think you guys are also unique in that you have so many merchants. I'm also curious how you're working with merchants, creating their 3D assets or getting their 3D assets. That I think that's really interesting as well.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about shared libraries, and that's something that we have to get merchants from different business units together to really, really leverage in a big way. And they're starting to really build an understanding of the value of that. Everything that we curate and model for one merchant in one scene, yes, they can leverage all of those models again for themselves, but they can also share it with a completely different category, because all of the furniture might become props in an electronics image, one that sells electronics. And so that shared library is really important for everybody to start to understand the investment in modeling every single thing and making imagery. And then for AR, I think, so we have a very tight relationship with emerging technology. We really work in lockstep. And we wanted to try, the company wanted to lean into AR. And one of the first forays into that was back to school. You're building your dorm room or whatever it might be. And so that, home is a very large category. We work on a lot of other categories, but that was a great use case and kind of a confined period of time as well. And so based on the results of that, they're feeling like, consumers can really benefit in other categories from that. I mean, even from as simple as it's TVs on a wall. I mean, it may not be the most amazing 3D model to make, but boy, oh boy, what a use case, right?
Yeah.
So many people can relate to, a couple things with TVs that are important. It's not just, does it fit in the wall? It's like, when I'm that far away from it, does it still, can I still see it? Back in the day when I bought a television in my living room, I literally had to like try to back up in the store and see if I could still see the picture. So there's, making 3D models is not always the most exciting model, but being able to give consumers that many tools is just exciting. So with AR, I mean, there's so much more we can do. I think with the Hay Needle project we talked about, I wonder if there's a way, once the room is configured someday, to push that into a web-based AR experience, or once the floodgates open and you have enough models, that's the thing, is you need to model everything. My mission a lot of times is that proactive modeling. Even if it's not going in a certain image, if you're doing American Farmhouse refresh, what is your entire collection? Let's model that now. Yeah. So AR is definitely a priority, as it is for many, many retail segments. And I'm just proud of that team. I can't claim anything for how beautifully they built the experience. One of the things we really wanted to do to differentiate was we wanted the quality of the model. Now, as you know better than anyone, it's a dance between the poly count and the ability to move it real time. But we really wanted it not just to be, does it fit, but really be able to see, does it go with everything? How does it really look? And that's nothing I did. That's the emerging tech team and the wizards on those teams. And I think they did and are doing a really beautiful job with that. And then they have also virtual try-on for apparel. That's another exciting space. There's all kinds of interesting things happening there, from non-AR, which is just web-based on Walmart if you go try on certain clothes. And now you can sort by, on the site for any category, I believe, you can sort by the ones that qualify for virtual try-on or view in your room. Could be wrong about that, but So apparel is another thing, and that again, the emotional use case. I think bringing something into your house, you're a little nervous, like, will it fit? Did I measure it correctly? And then with clothing, look, I don't know about you, but a dressing room can be a little terrifying depending on where you are. And for the Walmart customer, when they go into the store, they a lot of times they've got kids with them, or the whole family has come, and you just don't have time to, hey, I have these 7 things I want to take into the dressing room. Either everybody comes, which is not going to happen, or you don't get a chance. So virtual try-on for the Walmart customer, it is a really wonderful use case. I can't speak for other retailers, but for Walmart, just based on the psychographics and literally what people are doing when they're shopping, it's lovely to lift the burden off of that and have them be able to try it on virtually.
No, that makes total sense. And at the end of the day, I love that kind of each project you talk about, this test case and the data. So I think you guys, are obviously very good about saying, okay, we're going to test this. This is how we're going to test it. It's going to be confined to this store or this, demographic, and then we're going to measure it. And then, based on that, expand from there. Which I, talk with a lot of our clients. It's so important to say, define what success means, and then how are we going to measure it, and then learn from it and grow.
Yeah. And for us, certainly performance is important, but what we really want to see almost as much, if not more, is, does our customer use it, or is it benefiting them? Because we can do all the technology we want, and it's wonderful, and internally we're like, that is so cool. But then if it just falls flat, conversion rate measurement can be very deceptive. It can. So that can't be the only thing, although very enjoyable to sell product. One thing that I don't think it matters what size the retailer is. You and I talked about this. There's a movement afoot for free returns to not be so pervasive. So if we can mitigate returns, first of all, for the customer, it's a lot less hassle. But for us, we'd like to mitigate those returns and not have to have the moment, all of the cascade of things that happen when I have to return an item. My mindset, my irritation, certainly on the retailer side, like, not a great moment. So.
No, totally. I mean, we've had clients, who've implemented 3D and reduced returns by 66%, because in this case it was purses, but if I can use AR and know how big that purse is, like, most of the reason purses are returned is it was bigger or smaller than I thought it was, right? So that's huge. And no one wants to go back to the store. And then hitting back on your carbon footprint, the carbon use of a return is huge, because does that, get resold, or does it end up in a landfill eventually, which is, the worst case scenario. And so I promised I would help you try and figure out that carbon calculation, because we did it for one of our clients who replaced physical prototypes with 3D. And this was clothing, and we knew the average carbon cost of creating one garment, and we multiplied that out, and they're saving like 4.4 tons of carbon per collection, which is awesome. Everyone should be, worried about the environment these days.
And even the photo studio artists, they really want to participate in that effort, that rather than being the source of some of that, they really would love, and we talked about this before, let's carve out a set of assignments that were, maybe it's like, I would say, how many times do we really want to build a bathroom counter in the studio? Maybe that set space can be used for something else. So the photo studio colleagues are leaning way in with us. It's not an us and them thing. They're great partners. They're excited about what they can do to participate in this. I want to mention that, because they are involved and they are wonderful supporters of what we're doing. So
which is huge. And again, going back to that point of, like, tech is never going to fully replace physical reality. It's making it and better, it's improving it and allowing you to do more things. To your point with that budget save, to have a bigger, more purposeful photo shoot with things that make more sense for reality versus 3D. And you know, I think you touched on a lot, which is great. You're bringing a lot of different groups together. And I thought it was so important how you say, you know, it's not just about this one experience, but creating this 3D library that you can go back to and search and reference. So it's not like you're investing in creating this 3D asset and it's one and done. You can then use that. I like a prop in the background of the electronics shoot. And so just how important that is as an organization to have like a 3D content management system that can handle that. And that's where we can help. So shout out.
I was going to say, I think there's a company called VNTANA. I think there's two things in this industry that keep coming up as pain points. One certainly is CMS, because you can't start to talk about scaling without thinking about that part. My head of operations is a genius, and she's the one that keeps us honest. She's like, you can't, Cynthia, you got to calm down, because you can't start going from, you know, 5 figures of models to 6 figures of models without thinking about all of the things about organizing them. The other thing is QC. Again, carbon footprint formula, great. But I have not met anyone for retail who doesn't need, at some point, human eyes on those models. To mitigate returns, you've got to have, you can make the model quickly, more and more so, but I really need to see. We have a couple futons, for instance, that have a USB port, and we've missed that a couple times. Like, oh, I didn't see it. Very important selling point, it wasn't there. So.
Yeah, no, the QC is so important as we talk about, you know, we've talked a lot about like 2D renders from 3D models, and then real time. An issue we see, you know, if you're wanting to create 3D models for real-time experiences like augmented reality and others, you have to make them with real-time PBR materials. And we see a lot, if models were originally created for render only, people are trying to compare apples to oranges. So how are you guys thinking about that? Or are you, you know, making a push to just say, okay, we're going to do all real time, or is it always going to be a bit of both?
Well, we started with a use case that didn't require real time. And for a couple of years, we stayed small enough, and the shared library was, you know, small enough that we weren't really worried about that. But now that we want to set a standard for the model, whoever's making it. There is no way, as much as I would love to be that single source of truth, the largest retailer, there's a lot of people in the organization that need to make models for whatever they're working on. And we want to set that standard, like, that's fine, but please start with this type of file format to begin with. I think more and more learning from people like yourself about, look, if you're going to scale, there are certain things you need to think about, use cases you need to think about for that asset to really be able to scale going into the future, especially. So I don't know if we've figured it out yet, but at least we've flagged that it's something we better think about now. So
yeah. And I think that's so important, because at the end of the day, I mean, especially someone as big as Walmart, you're going to have vendors, you're going to have merchants creating assets, but if there's clear guidelines and rules people can follow, and to be honest, most people want some of those, like, where do I start? You know, but being able to have guidelines and even shared material libraries, we've seen so much speed up content creation, and just make sure that brown leather is the same brown leather look with everything, you know?
That gets into machine learning a little bit, but again, if we're planful ahead of time, then we're set up for those moments as well. And you know, yes, we're huge, but we do. I mean, even though the catalog is very large, you know, we don't sell Ferraris, so we don't need to worry about those PMS colors and those machine parts. Someday, maybe.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, for companies that are kind of just getting started, just looking into starting to do 3D for their goods, you know, what do you suggest to start? Like, what is some advice that you give?
First, you know, take a look at what are the operational pain points that 3D can help and even enhance And then you ask yourself, is the customer experience suffering from any of those operational problems? Sometimes it doesn't. People never know what's duct tape behind the scenes. But so looking internally, is there something that we can help, either again, cost savings or time savings? And then the customer experience, what is that? You don't want to start to make assets or do a technology test if it's not solving a problem that you already have. So I think it starts with problems, and then it starts with solutions and delight after that. And then making 3D models, thinking ahead of time for the use case, but planning for the future. I think we talked about this. If you're only thinking about AR, please don't just make decimated or low poly models. Start with high poly, guaranteed you will need that in the future. And it may take, a few more seconds or a few more dollars, but that's important. And then think about where you're going to store those models. What is the metadata that needs to accompany it? How are you going to support this operation? In the beginning, everyone starts to do 2 or 3 jobs in addition to their day job. But at a certain point, having specialists really makes a difference. And you will see that once you have specialists, they'll start to ask all kinds of questions that general public doesn't think about. So I think it's planning, and the back end planning can't be underscored enough.
Right.
And it's okay to start small.
Yeah. And I love that you said start with high poly. Because if you start with a high poly asset, you can create anything you want from it. And yeah, it needs to be optimized. But again, that's where we can help, or there's other platforms out there that could do it. But we've built an automated solution. So I hate it when we get low poly assets, because it's like it cuts you off of all the things that you could do with it. Because you basically, every medium, whether it's your e-com site, whether it's Facebook, Snapchat, etc., like they all have their different 3D model requirements. But if you start with the biggest, you can just make sure you have the highest res image on each platform that each platform will accept.
Plus, I really believe that what is required for real time now will potentially there'll come a day when high poly can be used real time. And then you would have cut yourself off the knees competition wise. Your stuff all of a sudden will look really low res comparatively. I'm sure smart people like yourself are working on things like that. The better it looks, the better. But then then we have certain experiences like next gen immersive. I don't like to use the metaverse word, but next word immersive, where those type of files have their own life and their own needs. And you can get ahead of yourself a little bit. But I just say, if you're starting, don't worry about starting small. It doesn't matter. You can have 5 models and experiment with what you want to do. I don't know what everyone's content looks like in the end, but with us, it was a better place to start with making virtual photography. And Hey Needle and Art.com and some other they didn't have a studio anymore to rely on. They had to rely on this technology, which is cheating a little bit, like, oh yeah, I just do street, but it helped show the rest of the corporation what was possible. And that's just invaluable.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Definitely. We saw a lot. COVID forced people to try a lot of new things, right? That would have probably taken years to try, but we still talk to clients who can't get samples from their manufacturer or they're 2 months delayed. And so, it's, obviously the past couple of years have been tough on a lot of people, but it has been great to at least see like the tech adoption and innovation that has happened because of it. And to your point of one day, high poly will be usable. Every cell phone carrier keeps pushing 5G. Once 5G is actually everywhere, we can have larger 3D models on your phone. And to your point, you need to be thinking about investing in this 3D library and how valuable that library is, so that 5 years from now, you're not throwing out old low poly assets, but you have the highest quality and all those levels of detail, or LODs, what we used from the game engine world. So you can go everywhere with it.
Yeah, and just to keep it honest here, you don't have to make samples. You don't have to ship them to the studio anymore. But we do need reference imagery. So somewhere along the line, that thing has to be photographed. And I think you and I have talked about, like, it depends on who you are. Don't send your CAD files somewhere where you may not need to be sending them, because they're your blueprint for your product. So of course we can work from CAD. Procedurally generated models are more and more, generating it from text. But for now, that's just a reality. I don't want to say, oh, the thing just never needs to be made. For real, with apparel, you can do things like that. But with home goods or even electronics, or like snow blowers or exercise bikes, things like that, we need pictures. So that's true. Right?
No, definitely. Well, this is awesome. This is such a great conversation. Anything you can touch on of future projects you're really excited about before we head out, or anything like that you can share?
I think probably there's too many things I could point to. And also, I think probably I would never get asked to speak again if I talked about, some of them. I would say the most exciting things are the things I don't even know about. The things that are happening that people are working on in their corner of the company that are going to blow us all away. I couldn't name them because I don't know about them, but I'm excited. Whatever's about to pop up, that'll be really cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was so great to hear, again, just like all of the amazing use cases for 3D that are happening in the background that some people don't even realize. To your point of, like, that's my favorite, when people are like, whoa, that's not a photo, that was 3D.
Oh yeah, no, that moment, like I said, that moment never gets old. I love it. It's important to make sure people understand in that moment, if you're working with them, what are they looking at? It's not just, wow. Like, I think when you look at Hollywood and people think about Dragon, they can actually tell you it wasn't real. Like, they actually can describe that, oh, that was made in CGI and it's this, but then when they look at an image for retail, they don't quite get that could be the same magic. So
yeah,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if anybody has questions, you can feel free to email us or pop them on the chat. But yeah, I hope everyone has a great Taco Tuesday. So
yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye.